the incomparable Morgan Fairchild has been a part of our lives. She's a SAG-AFTRA Ralph Morgan Award winner for her union service. Also, Hollywood Beauty Awards, Timeless Beauty Award in 2020. She holds nominations for Golden Globes for Flamingo Road, Primetime Emmy nomination for Murphy Brown, of course, with Candice Bergen, who we love as well, and recognizing her significant contributions to television, film, and activism as well. She is a beloved star, native of the great city of Dallas, Texas, USA. Started acting really, really young. And she's got a wonderful story about her mother enrolling her in drama lessons, which we're going to talk about. But, you know, when you think about her illustrious career, you can't not think about all the different shows and movies and projects that she's been a part of, stage performances. She truly has touched our lives in such an extraordinary way. She's been on the covers of so many magazines, including many, many TV guides as well for the collectors out there. She also wrote a fabulous book, which we'll talk about. And again, she is one of those people who has been resilient. She changes with the times. She adapts. She takes on all kinds of incredible roles, and she makes magic out of it too. Real TV and film magic. Of course, we know her from playing Jennifer Pace on the 1976 fabulous soap opera, Search for Tomorrow, which was on CBS. And she took that role on, and people love her for that role. But also, do you remember she also played Faye Dunaway's double in Bonnie and Clyde? Yeah. These are just a few of the many things that she's been a part of through the decades. Jennifer Wade, the original, on Dallas. You may remember we had, Patrick Duffy's been on our show. We've had Linda Pearl's here. Charlene Tilton was just on recently, and so many others from Dallas. Flamingo Road, too, was another great series that she was on and has some great stories in that vein as well. And of course, Happy Days, Henry Winkler's girlfriend. Amazing stories, too. We've had Anson Williams, Donnie Most, and Marion Ross with us as special guests on the Jim Masters Show. But then, of course, she met the incomparable Robin Williams and got a chance to be on Morgan Mindy on ABC as well. Battle of the Network Stars. Who wasn't on Battle of the Network Stars of the day? Everybody was on Battle of the Network Stars. Wonderful stories of working with the comparable Jane Wyman, Falcon Crest, for such a long time, a part of that series. Another terrific one, too. You may remember Paper Dolls, which is a favorite of hers, back in 1984 on ABC. And also another great one, The Zany Adventures of Robin Hood. She has amazing stories and a great respect for the late Roddy McDowall, who was a brilliant actor. And also, a lot of people know him from Planet of the Apes, but so much more before that. North and South, she was in that miniseries, and she was extraordinary in that series. And of course, The Seduction was another. I mean, these are just, and she even worked with Pee Wee Herman and Pee Wee's Adventures. Murphy Brown, Candice Bergen, some great stories too. Roseanne with Senator Bernhard. And this was another great one too, which I'm sure you're remembering, Fashion House and The City. Yeah, that was in 95. She also played Matthew Perry's mom on Friends. That's bringing back a memory or two, right? She was on Days of Our Lives, and she was also on General Hospital. And she was also on Bold and the Beautiful. I mean, she hit the soap operas too. She lived in New York. She's from Dallas. She's in LA. She's been everywhere. And in addition, we know her from television and film, right? But she has such a deep-seated love as well for the theater. She does, and she still does. And she got a chance to taste it when she was in New York and then some. She's extraordinary. She does a wonderful podcast. It's a lot of fun. Two Bitches from Texas with her sister as well. And really fantastic to have this iconic person who's very humble. When people tell her, you're beautiful inside and out, you're fantastic, I love you, she's very, very humble. You know why? Because she's grounded. She's centered. She's done it all. She's been through it all, and she remains centered and focused. And I think that's a beautiful thing. She's very inspiring to others and a real humanitarian. So with all of that said, right, it's like a red carpet introduction on the Oscars, but well-deserved for our guest, Morgan Fairchild, joining us.
I don't even know what to say after that.
Well, it's all true, and love from back east.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. And I hope it's not too cold there yet, but
not too bad. About 30, 32 degrees right now. So that's not too bad. And you spent some time here in theater and more in the New York area, right?
Oh, well, yeah, I lived there through most of the 70s, did Search for Tomorrow there, Kojak, all the shows there that were shooting at the time. And you know, and then I lived there again in 95, 96 when I was doing a show there. And then I've done a couple of shows off Broadway at Playwrights Horizons and the Promenade Theater. And so, and I love New York. I mean, I always considered myself a New Yorker, and New Yorkers can survive anything.
Yes, you got it. Absolutely. And you have that resilience. You know, if you didn't come from Dallas, Texas, the great city of Dallas with that Texas charm and resilience, I would say you would be from the East Coast, because you have there's a certain way about you that is a can-do spirit. And you take on things. And like I said earlier in the introduction, you really take on whatever is coming your way, and you find a way to work through it and make magic with it. Where does that come from within you, Morgan?
Well, thank you. Well, you know, and then that whole can-do thing is also part of Texas, and you know, we consider ourselves frontier women. You know, so it's a thing that Texas ladies pride themselves on, is being able to survive anything. The joke always was when we were kids, and you know, we had air conditioning, and it would be so hot in the summer, and I'd always say to my mother, you know, how do people ever settle here? Why would you stop here? Because it's so miserable before air conditioning. And the joke always was, this is where the mules died. And so if you can stay where the mules died, you can survive anything.
That is a good way to. So you got that early. You got that great Texas spirit early. And you acted as a child when your mother enrolled you in drama lessons after, and I know this is a story you've shared, just a little too shy giving a book reporting class. And she said, you know, maybe there's a way to bring Morgan out of the shell, and going to those dramatic classes was one of the ways to do it. And that was sort of an inspiration of your mother, right?
Well, yeah, my mother never meant to have actors in the family, but I was too shy. I couldn't make an oral book report. I stood in front of the class 3 days in a row and nothing would come out. And so, you know, coming from a family with lawyers and debaters and all of this, she was like, no kid of mine is going to be handicapped by this amount of shyness. So she enrolled us in drama classes, and you know, my sister loved it. My sister's always a big personality one, and I'm the shy, quiet bookworm. And, you know, so she would get excited every Saturday before we had to go, and I would throw up. And, but, you know, we would go, and they would mostly have us read things, stand in front. And I hated that. But at the end of the year, they had us do a play. And because I was the little fuddy-duddy that I was, they had me play the adult in the play. And so, and I kind of liked it, but I would never admit that, but I kind of liked it. And then one Saturday morning, my mother was reading the newspaper, and she announced, the Junior Players Guild is having auditions today. We should go. And my sister was like, oh yeah, let's go. And I'm like, no. So of course we went, and sat in the back of the auditorium all day watching kids do improvisational scenes and auditioning for Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. And this was a wonderful, I'm not sure if it's still there, the Junior Players Guild, and they did wonderful children's theater in Dallas for decades. Anyway, you know, and you're sitting there watching everybody, and you're thinking, I could do as well as that, but I'm not going down there. Anyway, finally my sister says, I want to audition. And so at that point, I knew if I didn't go and audition, I'd get yelled at all the way home. So, you know, I have a career today because my fear of the stage is second only to my fear of my mother.
Your fear of your mother.
So, yeah, but you know, then this is the nice thing, difference that an adult can make in a kid's life, is if that nice director hadn't given us little parts, I don't know if I would have ever had the nerve to go back. But he saw something in us and gave both of us little parts. I think we were wood nymphs dancing around Snow White in the forest and stuff. But it was a start, and kind of got bitten by the bug, and then we just kept going to more auditions and more auditions, and people kept giving us jobs. So it was amazing. Not what I thought I'd do. I thought I'd be a doctor or a paleontologist. So.
That's right, which I find fascinating. If I didn't go into television and radio and film myself, I wanted to do, and I still love it, architecture and design. So whenever I'm going over a bridge, I'm always appreciating the bridge, the architecture, looking at whatever I'm seeing, the valley or the skyline. And when I'm in cities, everybody else always looks down at the sidewalk as they're walking. I'm the one that says, look up, look at the skyscrapers, look at the reflections of the glass. And so that is something, yes, that you wanted to be a paleontologist, a doctor. Where did that fascination come from early on for you, Morgan?
Oh, well, Louis Pasteur was my early idol when I was a little kid. Cured anthrax, cured rabies, found cures for everything. And pasteurization comes from him. That keeps all of our milk products safe, God willing. And so I was fascinated with that. And then I always loved dinosaurs, always loved then paleoanthropology, and interested in all of these different things as science. I'm a science nerd. So, I mean, like when I first came to LA, the old thing was everybody would go to the Beverly Hills Hotel, or you go to Hollywood and Vine. And my first stop was the La Brea Tar Pits. So I just have always been fascinated with all the science.
Exactly, which I think is really, really cool. You did well in school, right?
Yeah, I was like one of these boring kids that teachers loved. I never opened my mouth. I was in advanced placement all the time and made straight A's. And, that's why I'd always gotten by on writing book reports. But this one teacher, and I owe a career to her, if she hadn't made me make an oral book report that time instead of doing what I usually did, which was the written, I would have not been propelled into this of my mother saying you have to go take drama classes.
Now, were you watching people on TV in the movies? Was anybody inspiring you? Were you enamored by what you were seeing on television and film, even when you were a kid?
Well, not enamored. When I was a little kid, the 50s on television, it was a lot of great people working. I mean, Clint Eastwood was on Rawhide, and Steve McQueen was on Wanted Dead or Alive, and Richard Boone was on Have Gun Will Travel. And there were a lot of Westerns on at that time. That's before the crime dramas took over. But there were always wonderful people to watch and aspire. And of course, I've always loved old movies, and just getting inspired by that. Back when I was a little kid is when they first started showing some of the old movies on TV. And so I remember seeing Judy Garland. I forget what the movie is, but it's just doing wonderful things. And even Garland had her own variety show on back then too, and seeing her singing oh, hallelujah.
Oh, yeah.
I
sang with Barbara Streisand, Happy Days Are Here Again.
Yes,
And
yeah. I mean, all of the different
Christmas
people.
specials, and yeah.
Oh, yeah. And then, of course, Ed Sullivan introduced so many. The thing about the shows back then, the variety shows, is they would have ballet people on and opera people on and symphonic, violinists and concert pianists and all kinds of different people that at that time in America, average American wouldn't have been exposed to. People didn't travel like they do now. People weren't exposed to some of those. So, and that's what Johnny Carson did a lot too, would give a platform to wonderful performers that got introduced to the average American home through that venue. I mean, whether it's, Lena Horne or the Beatles or, Beverly Sills or whatever. That was a great advantage at that time. Now people travel and have a lot more opportunities to see some of these performers themselves and people tour more to other cities now than they used to.
Absolutely right. And you mentioned you were on all the talk shows over the years yourself. So you got to meet Merv Griffin and Mike Douglas and John Davidson and Regis and Johnny Carson and all of them. Did you like going on the talk shows?
Well, they were always very fun. I remember the first one I did really was oh God, in Philadelphia. You just mentioned him earlier.
At KYW, Mike Douglas.
Mike Douglas. And I was on Search for Tomorrow, and I'd been taking Kung Fu for about 6 months at that time down in Chinatown. Anyway, so they wanted me to come down to do Mike Douglas, which meant you had to get on a train and go to Philadelphia. And so they came up with this idea that they wanted me to spar with Buddy Rich. And Buddy Rich was
and not on the drums.
A fabulous drummer, but he was also a black belt in karate. And I've been taking Kung Fu for 6 months. I am like terrified. Well, my Kung Fu class down in Chinatown, they always called me Hollywood, even before I ever went to Hollywood. And, because I had the long blonde hair and the whole thing. And they tried to make me quit. They told me later I'm sorry, my nose is just... After this story, they told me, we tried to make you quit Hollywood. We tried to. They would leave me in a horse stance for like 10 minutes. I mean, I on the Search for Tomorrow said it was a joke that you could never put me in sleeveless things in the summer because my arms were black and blue from doing katas and everything. and my legs were like spatter painted blue from being left in a horse stance. But they found out. I told them, oh my God, I'm going to go on Mike Douglas. And they want me to spar with Buddy Rich. So that's when they said, Hollywood, we tried to make you quit, but you cannot go on Mike Douglas and embarrass our school. So you're going to stay after class. We're going to teach you street fighting because that guy, Buddy Rich, he's a tough whatever. And he's going to kill you with the karate. So I'm like terrified. And anyway, so I am doing all this extra stuff. Anyway, I get down there and Flip Wilson was the co-host. And so they arranged it. They decided I wouldn't spar with Buddy Rich. Thank you, God. And who turned out to live in my neighborhood, and we became friends. but Flip is going to attack me from behind, and I'm to defend myself. Well, instead, Flip just threw me over his shoulder and walked off with me.
And did he do it as Flip, or did he do it as Geraldine?
No, he did it as Flip. But it was, it was a fun time. That's the first talk show that I did. But Merv was wonderful. He was always a great supporter. He liked me, and he was always great. I mean, all of the guys, I guess, had people they liked, and so would have on all the time. But I remember one of the times I did Merv Griffin, and it may have been the first time, was Ava Gabor was on. And of course, I'd grown up with Ava Gabor and Green Acres and all of this stuff, and so beautiful and so classy and glamorous. And I came out, and she had seen this miniseries I did, and she just started raving about me on this miniseries. And I never forgot the kindness of that, of, an actor, an established star, being so kind to a young person coming up in the business. I remember the first time I met Roger Moore, I was over at Mommy's and it was the same miniseries. I was walking to the ladies' room, and Roger Moore was there, and he leans over and says, "Aren't you Morgan Fairchild? I loved you in Dream Merchants." And I said, "You're James Bond. What are you doing home on Saturday night watching this miniseries?" But it was the kindness of a lot of the older actors at the time when I came out that were very, didn't treat you like a newcomer. They treated you like one of them. I was very fortunate to get to work with Natalie Wood, and that's where I first met Roddy McDowall too on another miniseries, and both of them treated me with such kindness and so gracious. And we were shooting on the Queen Mary, and we were in all our 1920s finery, and the three of us would have lunch in the grand ballroom by ourselves every day in our 20s finery, and they'd tell me old Hollywood stories and who really shot who and who was really sleeping with who. Being an old movie buff, I just lapped it up. I loved it. It was great.
Roddy McDowall was one of a kind, wasn't he? And I know you really admired him. And of course, people know him from a lot of great things. Planet of the Apes, it stood out for him. But you worked with him on this 80 Adventures of Robin Hood. What was that like, and what was it like working with Roddy and company?
Well, Roddy was great. I first met him on the Natalie Wood movie, I guess in '78, and we became great friends. And then we were doing the Robin Hood, and that was so funny. And we're shooting in a 12th century castle, and I'm playing Maid Marian. And I just remember there was one day, a young woman had been assigned to do bios on all of us for PR. So I had already done mine. I'm sitting there. Roddy is in his Prince Valiant wig, playing, King Richard and all this, and his whole regalia. We're in a 12th century castle on this long trestle table. I'm sitting at one end, and Roddy's at the other, facing me. And the little girl is sitting on the bench with her back to me, and obviously didn't have a clue. And started with, "Oh, and so, what's your name?" Well, Roddy, but Roderick McDowall. "Oh, how do you spell Roderick?" And so he spells it, and she says, "And you're originally from England?" And he says, "Yes, we came over during the war." And she says, "Oh, Vietnam?" And he said, "No, dear, there was a war before Vietnam." And then, just on. And she says, "And so what have you done?" And he says, "Well, I came over, I did How Green Was My Valley, and my friend Flicka." "How do you spell Flicka?" Yeah, and just going down all these Academy Award-winning movies and all this. And finally he says, "And then I hit my teenage years, and I was no longer the cute kid. And so then I went to the theater, and I was doing No Time for Sergeants." And she's, "How do you spell sergeants?" And then I was doing Camelot. "Oh yeah, how do you spell Camelot?" And then I was back, and I was doing Cleopatra. "Oh, how do you spell that?" And then he gets it. And finally, it's like, and then I did Planet of the Apes. She's, "Oh, I've heard of that one." And he came over to me after and said, "Oh, darling, my whole career reduced to an ape." To an ape. But of course, people remember it because he was brilliant as the ape, because
really
he was always brilliant.
Yeah.
He was always brilliant, and the dearest man and the dearest friend. And I considered him one of my best friends, as did everybody who ever met him, because he was just that kind of guy. I mean, if you met him and he liked you, you thought he was your best friend.
Yeah. And greatly missed and gone way too soon for everybody. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Of course, Search for Tomorrow on CBS, one of the legendary soap operas. And then you've been on several different soap operas. We've had soap opera guests here, actors and actresses, over the years. And one of the things that they have always said, which I've always heard too with folks I know, that, especially the ones in New York, here in the New York area, Another World, Guiding Light, some of the other ones too. If you can survive working on a soap opera, you can survive anything. The thick scripts and the constant shooting of episode after episode. Keep going. We got to keep going. How did the opportunity to play Jennifer Pace Phillips on Search for Tomorrow come your way?
Well, it was funny because I grew up in the theater. I got to New York. I couldn't get an agent. And I didn't have the right look for the time, they said. And back then you could go to an open call where you didn't have to have an agent, and stand in line for 5 hours and waiting for a chance for a 2-minute audition. And I would do that, and I'd get up there and they wouldn't let me read. And they'd say, "No, you don't have the right look. You're too glamorous. You're too elegant. You're too porcelain." And I said, "Well, look, can you just let me read?" "No, you don't have the right look." So I kept getting turned down. And so eventually, I was still doing theater, but not in New York, and still no agent. So when I was working in Dallas, when I was a kid, I also picked up extra money doing modeling. So for Neiman Marcus and different department stores, I'm too short to be a model, but I could do hair and makeup and skincare and hand and foot modeling and that stuff. So I thought I'd go over to Eileen Ford and see if I can pick up any extra money doing that kind of thing. So I'm waiting at Eileen Ford with my little portfolio on my lap, and all the tall, glamorous models are walking through, and I'm this shrimp. And this gentleman, very elegant gentleman, walked through, touch of silver in his hair, and very European, very elegant looking. And he said, "Who are you, and what are you doing here?" And I said, "Well, I'm Morgan Fairchild, and I'm waiting for Miss Ford, to talk to Miss Ford." He says, oh, well, she's busy. Why don't come in my office and talk to me? So okay. So I go in and Gene Barracat, and he says, we've just started. He's talking to me. And he said, oh, you're an actress. And I said, yes. He said, well, we've just started this commercial division. We're really trying to break into commercials. And we have a lot of beautiful girls, but they can't talk. And you're an actress and you're pretty. So you want to go with us for commercials? I said, great. So, start going up for that. But then one day he called and said, okay, well, there's this other venue that we're trying to break into, which is the soap operas. And they've got a part that it works 3 days. It's 3 episodes. They want you to come over. So go over for that. So I go over for that. Well, I don't get the part. But a week later, they call back and say, we had somebody doing a regular part that was not working out. And so that's how I got Jennifer Pace Films, and still had no agent, no acting agent, through just kind of flukes of, oh, you're pretty and you can talk, let's send you out.
Exactly. Did you enjoy the experience?
Oh, yeah, it was great. I mean, I worked with so many wonderful actors because in New York, they cast a lot of the soap operas back then with theater people. So we had Larry Haynes was doing Promises at Night, Tony nomination, maybe winning. And then Joel Higgins was doing Shenandoah. We had so many wonderful actors. I mean, Priscilla Lopez was doing Chorus Line and come in and do days. We were just working with Polly Holiday, all these Broadway stars. A kid starting out, you couldn't ask for anything better. The people who were regulars, but also the people in New York who were picking up extra money to pay for the country house because theater doesn't pay anything, So you're working with all these Francis Sternhagen, all these great Broadway people. And so it was great training. And also it was great training for camera. And I remember, because I'd spent so much time in the theater, I remember I would watch the show every day. And one day, one of the guys came by and said, why are you watching our show? And I said, well, I got married really young and I didn't get to go to college. I was hoping to go to SMU, and if I'd gone, they would have taped me doing scenes and then played them back to me and tell me everything I'm doing wrong. And these people are paying me to do it. So I would just watch every day and learn camera technique and learn what worked and what didn't work and what are my good angles and my bad angles, and don't do your head that way.
Right. So, exactly. And just soaking it all up. You also got a chance to be Faye Dunaway's double in Bonnie and Clyde, huh?
Yeah, that was when I was still a teenager. Like I said, because I started in the theater, I was also doing a lot of commercials in Dallas. And so one night I was getting ready to open. A funny thing happened on the way to the Forum, and I was literally walking out the door to go to the theater. And I got a call from the guy who owned all the sound stages where we shot. And he says, you want to be in a movie? And I said, oh, yeah, sure. And he said, okay, be at the North Park Inn at 5 a.m. tomorrow. And I've said, I'm opening a show tonight. I don't even, 5 a.m. And he said, well, that's it. And I said, okay, I'll be there at 5. And he said, I said, bring anything? No, just come. And just as we're getting off, he says, oh, can you drive stick shift? And of course, being a good actor, I lied through my teeth and said, of course, Then I got to the theater and said, guys, you got to take me out in the alley at intermission and show me how to drive stick shift. Yeah, I got to do this tomorrow. I don't know what. And so, the next morning they pile us all, it's pitch black at 5 a.m. November in Texas. And they put us all into this big bus and just drove us out to an hour and a half out of town in the middle of nowhere. And so we're getting off. It's still dark. And, what I can see, there's like nothing. We're in the middle of country Texas. And so I said, what do I do? And so they said, why don't you go look at the set? So I said, well, okay, where's the set? I mean, I don't see anything. They said, just go down that road. So it's this rutted dirt road in the dark in Texas in the middle of the cold. Anyway, so I start walking down this road. And I'm not seeing anything. A few scrub oaks here and there, but I'm not seeing anything. So I'm thinking, were they just kidding me? Am I going in the wrong direction? Maybe the, new kid, let's see how far she'll go down that stupid road, Anyway, as the dawn is breaking, I see a silhouette of a person coming toward me, first person I've seen, and kind of hunched over, hands in pocket, kind of over like the old James Dean poster. And I said, "Excuse me, sir, do you know where the set is?" And he looks up and he says, "Why, yes, I'll show you the set." And it was Warren Beatty. And, Warren Beatty at 28 with the sun up coming behind him is the most gorgeous thing I've ever seen. And so it was the beginning.
Follow him anywhere.
Yeah, exactly. But it was the beginning of a really kind of turning point in my life, because I really love theater, but I really loved the movie set. And it was when I really started getting interested in maybe thinking doing movies instead of theater. I hadn't really thought about that before. But it was great. And to, be on the set every day, and it was Gene Hackman's maybe third movie, and Estelle Parsons, Faye Dunaway's maybe third movie. Warren was known more as a glamorous star than he was as a producer at that point. And I remember the teachers at school would follow me around and say, "What's Warren Beatty really like?" And I'd say, "He's really smart." And they'd say, "Oh, yeah, right." And I'd say, No, he's really smart." But it was good. I remember there was one day, there was a young man, very shy, very nervous, had one big scene, and very shy, waiting for them to get to his scene. And I was like talking to him all day to calm him down. And that's Gene Wilder. And, and just the loveliest guy. I remember I ran into Gene on the street in New York one time, like after I'd gotten known too. And I said, "I'm that kid that was talking to you on Bonnie and Clyde all day." He said, "Really, that was you?" I said, "Yes."
That is funny. So many great stories and memories along
Sorry
the way.
about my sniffles.
No,
I'm sorry.
It's we were chatting before we went on, everybody, and Morgan is just so overwhelmed and touched that she's on the Jim Masters Show talk show series.
I can't contain myself.
She's waited years for this. I mean, she's done everything you can do in the industry, and now this is sort of a pinnacle. So she's just a little emotional, and we appreciate that, Morgan.
Well, don't take it the wrong way.
At least that's the story we're going to run with. So Dallas comes calling, and the Jennifer Wade role, which was, really something groundbreaking for you as well. And of course, a fantastic series based on the city where you're from, Richardson, right in the area there. Richardson's a great spot. I did a TV shoot in that area. Went to some great restaurants. It's a great, great spot there. But here you have a series that, is sort of covering the area that you're from, and you get to play this role and work with these other iconic figures. How did that come your way to take on that role on Dallas?
As I recall, they just called and offered it to me, but the show wasn't on the air. Well, I was starting to get known, and once you started to get known, then they call and offer you things. You don't have to go in anymore. And it was ostensibly a one-off, and the show was not on the air yet. Nobody knew it was going to be this huge hit, so it was fun because everybody was fresh and new, and such a great group. Patrick Duffy is a doll. Linda Gray is a doll, and Larry Hagman was just hysterical to work with. We had one big scene together. We were chewing the scenery like crazy. So, just a great group, and it was fun to be home in Dallas and come back. Having worked in New York, worked in LA, done the miniseries, done all these other things, and come in and do that, and come home as kind of a success. That New York didn't chew me, because a lot of people that I knew in theater told me later that because they knew how shy I was, and I was always the quiet one and everything, that they thought New York would chew me up and spit me out. So to be able to come back and prove people wrong, that in spite of the fact that I'm very shy, I'm, got a backbone of steel and I can take a punch, which is the main thing to survive in this business. You got to be able to take a punch and get back up. So exactly, at least right. I proved I could do that.
Yes, that's that resilience for sure. That's the resilience that you have. And then working, of course, with the family at Happy Days on ABC, Gary Marshall and company, really amazing working with Henry Winkler as his girlfriend, another iconic and fantastic guy. That was a terrific opportunity for you, huh? Happy Days?
Well, yeah, that was like one of my early jobs when I first
Yeah.
got out there in 77. And to be playing Fonzie's girlfriend in like 77 in America was like God's gift. So, and that whole cast, they're all so nice. Henry's wonderful. He was so great to work with and so kind. And Marion and just everybody, Anson and Donnie and everybody was just wonderful to work with. And they were so kind of, they always say, well, whenever you're over here, come over and say hi. So whenever I was on the Paramount lot, I would go over and say hi. So I went over one afternoon and Henry said, hey, do you have to go anywhere? And I said, no. And he said, stay and watch our guest star. He's just amazing. So I said, okay. So I stayed all afternoon just to watch this guy and just to be able to tell him he's a genius. And so, a few months later, I get a call from William Morris, and they said, oh, good news and bad news. What's the good news? Well, you got the TV movie you wanted. Great. What's the bad news? Well, Gary Marshall has this new series, and it's all a big secret, and nobody knows anything about it. And, he wants you to do the show. He loves you, but he doesn't want to pay you. And he doesn't want to he only wants to pay you scale. And he doesn't want to give you a contract. It's just recurring. And, you're making so much more money than that now. We think you should pass. And I said, well, what's the name of the show? He said, Mork and Mindy. And I said, that's Robin Williams' show. And he said, who's Robin Williams? And I was like, because there was a time for everybody when it's who is that? And so I said, God, don't tell Gary. Robin Williams is a genius. I'd work for free to work with Robin Williams.
Absolutely.
I mean, they didn't know who he was yet, but I knew who he was. And so that was great fun doing Mork and Mindy. And because I grew up in the theater, I can be very improvisational. And of course, Robin was madly improvisational. And so I went over to watch him tape the show before mine because the show wasn't on the air yet. And so I wanted to see what the character relationships were. So anyway, we start our day and we do a read through, a table read, as they say, where literally you just sit at a table and read the script out loud and see how it sounds. And then we got up to start blocking with the cameras and moving around. And I quickly saw that what happened was they'd start with the script and then Robin would go. And, and everybody would just stand back and watch Robin go because he's brilliant. But when I got up to do it, we started the script and then he threw something and I threw something and he looked at me and he threw something and I threw something, he threw something. And so we're going back and forth. And then he comes over and he grabs me by the waist and pulls me in the air and says, Mama, you're one of me. And so we would just improvise a lot of stuff because at that point I seemed to be the only one who would go with him and play with him because my sister and I had the great good fortune of working with the great improvisational actors ever growing up in the theater. And, back in the 80s when people would say, oh, who are the great people you've worked with? And I'd say, Larry O'Dwyer and Robin Williams. So you've never heard of Larry O'Dwyer, but he's as brilliant as Robin Williams. And, so we'd grown up with that. So when people gonna play and play around with it, I'm your girl.
Right.
So we had a great time. And Robin, again, gone too soon. And just the loveliest, sweetest, most generous-hearted guy. Just a lovely, lovely man. And I mean, every good thing you ever thought about Robin Williams is true. Just the sweetest, kindest man.
Absolutely. And the episodes, they will live in perpetuity with all of the fun and all the laughter. And you were great. Like I said, they can throw anything at you, drama, comedy, anything. And you can take it and you can run with it because you make the best of it. It's just an innate ability that you have to think quick on your feet. You have this phenomenal quick wit, this dry wit, which lends itself beautifully. And as stunning as you are, which millions of people have always said, but inside and out, you don't take yourself too seriously. You'll be brilliant at the work, but you don't take yourself too seriously and you roll with the punches, which I think is a fantastic thing. And you can see that in all of the work that you've done. It's really extraordinary, Morgan.
Well, thank you. You know, it's so lucky to be working with so many great people. I mean, even even on Mork Mindy, you know, like Robin's managers had this other young comic that they wanted to have a part to give him a break on. It was David Letterman. It's like we did an episode called Mort Goes Irk for like Takeoff on Est at the time, one of those self-help groups, and David is the Irk leader. But it's like so many great people getting a start back then that later became legends, and all kinds of different drama and comedy, and you know, just it was a great time to be around Hollywood and exploring a lot of the possibilities of TV and film at the same time as some of these people who were so brilliant.
Absolutely. Flamingo Road came your way with Mark Herman and company as well. And that was another great one, huh?
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Yeah, that was a fun one. That was a fun one. I was sorry when that was canceled. I got to work with so many of the actors I had grown up watching, Howard Duff and Barbara Rush and Stella Stevens, and, you know, Kevin McCarthy. I mean, when I told my sister I was going to be working with Kevin McCarthy, it was like Invasion of the Body Snatchers. You know?
She knew it right away.
Yeah, it's like, you know, people we had grown up watching, to suddenly get to work with them was so great. You know, and it's one of the things I think is sad now is a lot of the young people coming up, they don't know who anybody is. And so they don't even know if they're working with good people or not. I remember when I first started on Falcon Crest, I went over to Cesar Romero and said, okay, Cesar, tell me, what was it like working with Marlene Dietrich in 33 in Devil is a Woman? There was one night, because I'd gotten one of my early jobs when I was out here was with Robert Wagner on a show called Switch. So I knew him before I knew Natalie. And so I was over at Chasen's one night for dinner, and RJ came over to the table and he says, hey, we've got a friend at dinner who's a big fan of yours, really wants to meet you. Could you come over to the table? And I said, sure. You know, so I go over. It's Fred Astaire. I mean, all the hours I spent in New York theaters at Fred and Ginger movies. It's like that Fred Astaire wanted to meet me. Well, I was in heaven.
Absolutely. Could you imagine?
But that's the way the older stars were back then. You know, you'd go to a gala, you'd be sitting between Olivia de Havilland and Jimmy Stewart, or Bette Davis, and, you know, Stuart Granger. I mean, all the people I grew up watching, Roddy, Natalie Wood, so many people I ended up getting to work with, and so grateful. I mean, I took the pilot of Hotel just to have scenes with Bette Davis.
Right. She was interesting to work with, huh?
Oh, she was fabulous. She was fabulous. You know, they'd warned me that Betty could be a tough cookie, but they'd warned me she doesn't like working with other women, and she's always early, and then she's barking at the crew if they're not ready, blah, 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 blah. And so, but I was dying to work with her. And I had been at a couple of things. Literally, I was presenting an Oscar that year, and I'm standing backstage at the Oscars, like 3 feet from her, chain smoking. She never pays me any attention, you know. And I'd been at a gala dinner where she was at the same table. We'd been introduced, but, you know, again, barely talked to me. And so anyway, so I arrive on the set, having been warned she's always early and she doesn't like women and blah, blah, blah. And my trailer isn't there. We're shooting in Hancock Park, which was the real old money in the 20s before Beverly Hills came along. These are like the major mansions from the 20s. The old school money. And so I'm sitting on, my trailer is lost. And I am sitting on the lawn of this giant mansion where we're shooting, knowing Bette Davis is going to be waiting on me because I can't get ready because my trailer's not here. So finally, you know, they start the master without me. She and Jim Brolin have a bit of something before I come into it. And so I'm, you know, my trailer finally gets here. I'm slapping on the goo and grabbing up my stuff and, you know, going in. I go to the carrying all my junk. I go in and I go to set things down. And Elaine Rich, Buddy Rich's sister-in-law, who was a producer of Aaron Spelling, she comes over and says, oh, thank God you're here. She says, have you met Miss Davis? I said, well, no, not really. And she says, well, come meet her. I said, okay. So I go over and it's so nice to meet you. And she said, I start to go and she says, oh, we met at the Valentino Awards, one of those galas where she hadn't said hello. So I said, I'm sorry, I didn't think you'd remember. And I started to go and she says, and another thing. And I said, yes. She says, I've got something to say to you. And I'm like, and the whole set stops. You can hear a pin drop. And I said, yes. And she says, you are marvelous. And I'm, oh, thank you. Wow. And I start going, she says, on another thing. And she starts going down like every film project I've ever done, every Barnaby Jones, everything I've ever done, Happy Days, all these
Jack.
Yeah. And the miniseries and the TV movies and all that stuff. And finally I said, Miss Davis, that's so kind of you, but that's not a very good movie. And she says, but I saw what you were trying to do with it. And, and I head over and put my stuff down in my director's chair. Elaine Rich, the producer, comes over and says, I can't get good morning out of her, but you are marvelous. I said, yeah. So anyway, so then she kind of followed me around all day. And, what should I expect from these bastards? I've never done a series before. So I'm telling her my experiences, on different shows I've worked with. And finally she says, that's what I like about you. You remind me of me. When I stood up to to Jack Warner, and I said, well, Miss Davis, no, when you stood up to Jack Warner, you changed the business. I'm just standing up for myself. Right. But she was such a sweetheart. I remember because by that time she's like this tall, and she's standing there smoking, kind of looking up at me saying, how tall are you? And I said, 5'4". She says, me too. I'm like, maybe once, but now I'm towering over you. But she was such a sweetheart. And then she kind of adopted me. And she was getting an award from Women in Film. I think it was Women in Film anyway. That was a luncheon, and they called up and said, are you coming to the luncheon? And I said, well, I'm going to try to get there. She says, no, you've got to come because Betty says she's not coming to get the award. If you don't come and present it to her, you got to go.
Wow.
So I said, okay, I'll come, but she was just so kind. And I remember one time she called up and she said, she had done a TV movie, early HBO movie with Jimmy Stewart about an elderly couple that has a suicide pact. Right. And so, kind of cutting edge for the day. Anyway, so she calls up and she says, they want to have a screening at the Directors Guild. And I'm very nervous about it. I don't want people, I don't know what people are going to think of it. Would you come? And I said, sure. So I was dating Johnny Carson at the time. So I brought Johnny with me. I knew she knew Johnny. And so we get to the Directors Guild and I'm looking around and, it's full of people and I can't see Betty anywhere. And finally, like a few guys move because Betty's this tall, there's Betty. So she comes, Morgan, thank God you came. Hello, Johnny. Thank God you came. What am I going to do? People are going to file off. They want me to stay after. I don't know what what if they don't like it? What are they going to say to me? I said, just calm down. First of all, I'm amazed that she cares, but just calm down. I said, look, Johnny and I will stand. We will talk to you after the screening. And then if people, you're safe because you can be talking to us. And if people stop and say something, they do. And that you don't have to face anybody if you don't want to. So that's what we did. We just did that. But she was always a hoot. I remember I'd gone over when I was shooting Robin Hood with Roddy. I'd gone over to England. We were shooting in England. And, because we did the pilot of Hotel. And then it was like this big thing of Betty isn't going to do the series. What's wrong with Betty? All the tabloids are full. Is it a stroke? Is it cancer? Why is she not doing the series? And so, and I didn't know. And I'm in England. Anyway, I sent her flowers and everything. And she sent me back a really sweet note and says, I can't believe you heard about my little problems across the pond. Anyway, I get back to New York and Robert Osborne, was a great friend of hers too, and mine. And I called up Bob and I said, okay, I'm in New York. What's going on? He said, I'm sworn to secrecy. I cannot tell you, but she would love, she's at the Lombardi Hotel. Call her up, ask her to lunch or tea. She won't go, but she would love to be asked. So I said, okay. So I called the Lombardi Hotel and they said, we have no Miss Davis there. And I'm okay, because I know Bob just told me. Anyway, so I said, All right, well, I'll tell you what. If she should happen to check in the next 10 minutes, would you tell her Morgan Fairchild called? So before I could even hang up the phone, it was ringing again. It was Betty calling back. And so you're thinking, what do I say? It's this big secret. What's wrong? What's wrong? What happened? Well, I didn't have to come up with anything because she immediately says, well, I'll tell you, darling, having cancer and a stroke at the same time is a real bitch. And she just launches into it. And, but she was such a great friend.
She felt really something from you, connected to you, maybe even reflections of herself, a younger version of herself, the resilience, the strength, that can do that you have. And she obviously gravitated to you, which was a beautiful thing, Morgan.
Well, thank you. I discovered over the years that a lot of the older stars liked me. And Jane Wyman also said this, and Betty said something similar of like, well, that first day that I met her, Betty, she said, you're the only one now, which isn't true, but you're the only one now that has the glamour and the acting chops like we did. Mm. And, and the fact that I had a very professional attitude, always on time, my lines, pro. All of the older stars seem to respect that. And I know Jane Wyman said something similar, that you're like us, you're like old school. And and a lot of the kids even then weren't and aren't now, you're terribly responsible. It's a production, it's money. You're there to get the job done.
Exactly. Speaking of Jane Wyman and starring on Falcon Crest on CBS as well, and some wonderful people you got a chance to work with on that great series in the early 80s. That was quite an amazing thing too. People know you and love you from that series. And Jane even made you some chicken soup.
Oh, well, that's my favorite Jane Wyman story. When we were shooting up in Napa Valley, we would, the actors would stay at the Silverado Country Club, and then the crew would stay at the Holiday Inn Express or whatever. And we were flying in and out of Oakland. And so that was closer to the airport. But there was one time I went up and I was only going to work for one day. So I thought, well, I'll just stay at the Holiday Inn and it's closer to the airport and I can sleep later. So I did my bit. I came back. I got sick as a dog. I was throwing up so bad. I was so sick. I thought I was going to die. And of course, everybody thinks I've left because I was only there for one day. Anyway, so about day 2 or 3, I hear this little knock on the door, blah, 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 and I'm leave the towels at the door. It's like, and then I'm knock. So finally I haul myself out and go over and open the door. And there's this tiny little woman with her hair in a bun and no makeup with this giant pot of soup. And it was Jane with no makeup, without the wig. And she always stayed at the Holiday Inn because she didn't like to go back and forth. And Jane didn't like to be on freeways. She didn't like a lot of stuff. She didn't like to go back and forth. So she would just stay there because they gave her a kitchen and she could just set up like it was a house for her. And she'd stay there the whole time we were shooting. And she'd heard that I was sick. And that lovely woman made me a big pot of homemade chicken soup and hauled it down there herself. She didn't call, somebody to come bring it. She hauled it down there herself to take it to me. And that's always how I remember her, as just that kindness, that old school, old pro, we're all in it together, that real kind of theatrical family kind of thing is how I remember her. But she had a lot better sense of humor. They kept warning me about things when I started the show that, she won't like that or she won't like that. And, they were usually wrong. She did like me.
Exactly. Somebody else that did too, and talk about theatrical, being a broadcast guy myself, television and radio and all, you got a chance to co-host Battle of the Network Stars on ABC with the one and only Howard Cosell, which was what a firecracker and theatrical guy he was for sure as an ABC broadcaster. What was it like taking on the role of the co-host on the network, especially anybody was always on that series, and working with Howard?
Well, I think I co-hosted with him more than once. The thing is, I'm not an athlete. So they kept calling saying Battle of Network Stars. I said, guys, I don't do anything. I don't play sports. I'll kill myself out there. But they said, well, you're very articulate. Why don't you co-host with Howard? And I said, oh, well, that I could do. I could do that. So Howard and I were great friends. Howard was fabulous because we would, between takes, while they're out there killing themselves on tug of war and in the mud, Howard and I would be sitting there talking about Supreme Court cases. Because Howard was an attorney. I think he was an attorney. And anyway, we would tell my uncle had won a anti-censorship case before the Supreme Court, family of lawyers and debaters. And my cousin prosecuted for the Justice Department. So we would sit there and talk about all these Supreme Court cases and things, what was coming up, what were the legendary ones. And so not anything anybody thought Howard and I would be talking about. I think the producers listening on it were saying, what the hell? What are they doing? But he was great fun. He had a great sense of humor. Again, very good sense of humor about himself, and we would have a great time. Those were always great fun. If I'd had to do a sport, I would have dreaded the things. But because I got to see Howard and just kibitz with him all day, we always had a great time.
You did a great job with that too, absolutely. And I'm surprised they haven't called you to broadcast the Olympics. You were very good.
Oh, thanks.
As the network announcer, right? Another great one too. Of course, I know that was near and dear to your heart was Paper Dolls back in '84 on ABC. That was another great one to be a part of, huh?
Well, that's actually my favorite of the series that I did because I loved my character Racine, and she was so much fun, and because they let me ad lib anything I wanted, and I have this wise ass sense of humor, so I was always throwing in all these ad libs. But it was great. We had such a wonderful cast: Lloyd Bridges, Brenda Vaccaro, Nicolette Sheridan, Terry Farrell in the picture there with me, Richard Beamer, Dak Rambo, Jennifer Warren. We had Anne Shadeen. We had so many wonderful actors in that. And when you're doing a series, you really appreciate the good actors who are professional, who bring something to the scene and aren't walking through it. And so it was always great fun to go into work every day. Dak and I became great friends. And, I'm still in touch somewhat with Terry Farrell. And then Nicolette and I just did a Christmas movie a couple of years ago, Ladies of the 80s, A Diva's Christmas. And, catching up with her. So it's, it's a small business. You stick around long enough, you meet everybody and work with everybody.
Great series, right? We had Linda Gray was on talking about it. And she was amazing. And you had Lonnie Anderson, right? And Donna Mills, all of you together who really, certainly have left your marks in the hearts and minds of so many people. You guys, sort of the A team of that period, but have individually done so many incredible things on your own as well. And one of the amazing things that you're a part of was, and lots of great miniseries, incredible TV movies, the episodic series, like you mentioned, Barnaby Jones, Kojak, I mean, everything that there was and is, but North and South was another incredible thing to be a part of. This was something special, huh?
Oh, it was amazing. I mean, it took 2-3 years to shoot. So I was in and out, they would fly us into different cities. And it was amazing. I remember flying in, David Walper was flying us in on his jet, Hal Holbrook and me and Dick Smith, his great Academy Award winning, I think, makeup artist who would create, turn him into Mark Twain for his show. And in this case, turn him into Abraham Lincoln for North and South. And Elizabeth Taylor was on the flight. And, it was just one of those great things when we landed in Charleston and you came down in full, Civil War regalia, and they put dirt down on all the streets, which I think annoyed the Charlestonians a lot at the time. And Hal would come down as Lincoln, and you just felt like you were there. It felt like it transported you into a whole other time. It was an amazing show to work on. And I remember having lunch with John Jakes, the author of the books, North and South, that it was based on, having lunch with him and his wife a few times and just discussing all his research on Civil War for, writing the books. It was an amazing time. It was this huge production. And I remember when I went in for the fitting on the costumes, and after we were fitting for a while, I said, well, where are the corsets? And they said, oh, nobody would wear the corsets. I said, oh, no, you have to wear the corset because you don't move the same. Because I come from the theater. You have to move the same. If you're not in a corset, you don't move like the period. So they were delighted that they had somebody who was willing to wear the damn corset. And, just all the attention to detail that went into it, and just all the wonderful actors that were associated with it, some big parts, some small parts, and of course made a star really out of Patrick Swayze.
Yes, right. Yeah. It's funny. We just saw Ghost again 2 weeks ago, and just reminded us of what a vibrant soul he was, and so creative, and gone too soon, Patrick Swayze. Really something else. You just talk about variety and the ability to take on anything. Wonderful friendship with Pee Wee Herman and Pee Wee's Adventure, working with Pee Wee. Didn't he see you at an evening at the Improv?
I was hosting night.
You were hosting it.
They were filming it, and I was hosting it, and they had like 3 older comedians, and I remember Shecky Green was one of them. And then, in the afternoon, we're having a run through, and all the older guys came in to run through their bits. And then this young guy comes in and comes over to me and says, I'm not going to run through my show. I just stopped by to tell you, whatever happens tonight, I won't hurt you. And I'm like, okay. Like, what the hell is he going to do? Okay. Anyway, so that night he comes out as Pee Wee Herman, and he's got a brown paper bag of plastic spiders and snakes and all this stuff. He's throwing things at me, and and again, because I just improvised, we just had a great time. So after the show, he comes over and says, oh, you got me. Nobody ever gets me. You got me, and you just went with it. And I said, of course, so we became great friends. And so we would, go a lot of places together. He was getting nominated for a lot of awards at that point, so he would ask me to go to do like that, like 2 award ceremonies, and I'd come in my evening gown and he'd come as Pee Wee. But then one time he called up, and that's when I still had an answering service, and they said, we have Pee Wee Herman on the line. And I said, okay. And I got on, I said, Paul, I know your real name. You don't have to say it's Pee Wee Herman. And so anyway, so he said, I have a big favor to ask. I said, yeah. And he said, I'm doing my first movie. And I said, great. And he said, and we have no money, and we're in a shoestring budget, and we need some celebrity cameos, and everybody's already turned us down. And I said, so now you come to me. I said, hey, don't tell people everybody's already turned you down. And he said, we have no money. I said, I got the no money part. I said, when do you need me? And he said, Thursday. I said, well, let me see if I get off Falcon Crest, so I called him, I got up. And so I said, what do I do? He said, come to the back lot at Warner Brothers show. So I go to the back lot, and they're doing this ninja fight in kind of the wooded area back there. And so I said to Paul and Tim Burton, because it was Tim's first movie, I said, guys, I had 4.5 years of Kung Fu in Chinatown in New York. I can do this ninja fight for you, other than falling out of a tree, because if I break a leg, Laura Marr's going to sue me. So we did the ninja fight, and then Jim Brolin shows up in Pee Wee drag. I'm like, what are you doing? He says, I don't know. So they put us together and said, just look at each other and say, I know you are, but what am I? And we said, what does it mean? And they said, it doesn't matter. It'll be funny in context, because we don't have a script. Jim and I, we have no script. We have no sides. We have no idea what we're doing. We're just here. And so we did our bit. And so, I'd done the pilot of Hotel with Jim a couple of years before, so I knew Jim. I said, hey, do you have to go back to work today? And he said, no, I got the whole day off. I said, yeah, me too. You want to do more? And he said, well, yeah, what can we do? I said, I don't know. Let's go talk to the guys. So we go over and talk to Paul and Tim and say, you got us for the day. You want to do something else? And they said, what else can we do? We've got this, they loaned us the back lot, but we don't have any other sets. What could we do? So Jim says, let me make a phone call. So he calls Aaron Spelling, and they're not shooting on the Fairmont set that day, the hotel set, and it's on the Warner Brothers lot. So we're right there. So we go over, and now we've got a set, and now we got to figure out what to do on the set. So I become a spy, and Jim is a big game hunter, and Paul becomes a bellhop, and you've got paging Mr. Herman. And that whole scene is just totally improvised, but because the idiot blonde said, "Hey, you want to do more? What can we do?"
Hilarious! That is really amazing. And again, Paul Rubin's also gone too soon, but great stories and memories. Murphy Brown, also Candice Bergen and company, working with her, which was terrific on that. And you got the primetime Emmy nod from Murphy Brown, which I think is fantastic. Tell us
Oh,
about
thank
that.
you.
Yeah.
Well, it was great. They called and asked me to do it, and the whole concept was kind of funny because it's Murphy Brown, and this is going to be I'm playing an actress who is going to be a series based on Murphy Brown's real life. Only they're calling me like Aaron Green or something instead of Murphy Brown. Anyway, and so I'm kind of following her around the set the whole time, trying to gather, as actors do, gather the reality and annoying the hell out of her. And then at the end, she gets very surprised because she's been kind of putting me down through the whole show. And then suddenly I come up with a few things that are smart and fun and and she's like, oh. So, and that was another one because I lay out all this environmental stuff, and the way they'd written the script, it didn't quite hit it. So I asked him if I could write something out that would I wanted to throw in a lot of facts, just bowl her over. The comedy would be that I suddenly, after she's been trying to dismiss me as an airhead, I lay her out with bum, 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 all these facts on environmental issues, which is one of my issues. And so I kind of rewrote it, and then it got a lot of laughs, So, and I got an Emmy nomination for it, so that was nice too. But she's great. I love Candice. Everybody over there. Jim Kimbrough was great. I'd known Jim when I was doing Search for Mara in New York. I mean, it's old home week,
So many people that you've worked with. Sarah Bernhardt, episodes of Roseanne too.
Mm-hmm.
That was groundbreaking, taking on that role too, wasn't it?
Well, that's why I wanted to do it. When they called me, the agents called and said, we're not sure about this. So I said, well, let me see the script. And, so I read the script, and it's like the whole episode, Sandra Bernhardt's talking about her new girlfriend. And then at the very end, she opens the door and it's Morgan Fairchild, which I thought was hysterically funny. Yeah. And so, so I said, sure. So, but I also wanted to do it because, I'd done all this AIDS work in the 80s, and I've tried to take the stigma off of the gay and lesbian community for years, because I grew up in the theater. All my friends since I was a kid were he, she, and other. And so it's just people. And so I thought it would be a real good chance to, you have to remember this is 1992. Things were not as open as they are now. And I thought it was great to take the stigma off of the whole thing. I think it was the first time it had ever been a lipstick lesbian played on it. On TV, and try to make it accessible, make it fun, and again, just bring the reality of real life into a sitcom. That a lot of people are gay or lesbian, and they're people. They're people. Right, yeah. And back then, 30 years ago, it just still wasn't being talked about on TV. So I thought this was a great opportunity. I always love doing things people don't expect me to do, things that are iconoclastic, anything that breaks barriers, anything that creates a level of humanity, anything that shows kindness, anything that is not what people are expecting me to do.
Your body of work reflects that in so many different ways. And also, the causes you believe in and the things that you've been able to do to inspire and lift others, which I think is extraordinary. Truly, where you've gotten the time to be able to do it all is amazing, but you continue to make the time, which I think is fantastic. You're also, of course, noted for being Matthew Perry's mom on Friends, the iconic series on NBC. What was it like working on Friends and with Matthew and everybody there?
Well, wonderful. I'm wonderful. Such a lovely young man, and just devastating to lose him so young, and especially when I think we all thought he was doing better and that he'd sorted things out. And so it was very, very hard. I felt so bad because I had not seen him in a while, and I had been following his progress and the book and everything, and you really thought that he was doing better. So that was part of the tragedy too, as it seemed like he'd overcome a lot of the issues, and then to lose him so suddenly and so tragically was really hard.
Absolutely. Great actor and a great talent. And did you once work with his father too?
Oh yeah. Well, the first day on well, it's like when I took the part, I was talking to Cicely Tyson, a brilliant actress, and she's, "Oh, Morgan, you're too young to play that guy's mother. You shouldn't do that." And I said, "No, you got to take that transition at some point in your career. I played kids' mothers and teenagers' mothers, and young man mothers are coming up. Of course, usually I'm playing the bitch, but anyway, so I said yes. So the show wasn't a big hit yet. I mean, I'd seen it and I thought it was really a good show, and I was right. So I said yes. So the first day on the set, Matthew comes running over to me and, all arms and legs and, sweetheart, big puppy. And he says, "Oh, you won't remember me, but I used to hang out with you on Flamingo Road and Falcon Crest with my dad." And I'm like, "Who's your dad?" And he said, "John Bennett Perry." And I was like, "Oh my God." I said, "You were that kid?" Oh my God. Because John Bennett Perry had a recurring part as a sheriff on Flamingo Road and Falcon Crest, and I'd worked with him several times. And so then I'm thinking, well, I guess I am old enough to be this kid's mother. He was hanging out when I'm an adult working on the set. So, but it's just lovely, lovely young man.
We wanted to chat about Rudolf Nureyev as
Oh my God.
boy.
Nureyev got me out of Texas. I went to see Rudolf Nureyev and Margot Fonteyn dance Romeo and Juliet in a film when I was 16, and it made me realize there was so much beauty that wasn't football and drill teams and everything that Texas was at that time, and that I could aspire to that kind of beauty. And I met Rudy many times, and I still have his picture and a poster he autographed for me in my living room. He was a god to me, and was
Really
very kind
is.
to me. And next time I'm on, I'll tell you how he kind of saved my mother too. And we can talk Bruce Lee. We can talk about Bruce Lee too.
James Brown. Yeah. A real quick podcast too.
Yeah. Oh yes, our podcast is Two Bitches from Texas, and please come and follow it and subscribe. We're looking for subscribers because that drives numbers, and I think you'll like it a lot. The latest one to drop was Stephen Tobolowsky, who is hysterical. It's hysterically funny episode, and in a few days we've got John Edward the Psychic, and that's a very interesting episode too. And but we've had Donna Mills, we've had my sister has a young influencer who's got 8.5 million followers, and of course my first question to him is, what the hell is an influencer?
What's an influencer?
What do you do? And my friend Tom Nichols, who is a Russia expert, writes for The Atlantic. So it's a very eclectic grouping. And so far, everybody seems to have liked a lot of them. And they said, these make me think. They make me think.
That's great. Go to morganfairchild.com to learn more about that and so much more about this iconic, brilliant, and fantastic actress. And,
thank you. Or you can go to twobitchesfromtexas.com too.
Perfect.
Thank
Perfect.
you.
You're the best, Morgan. Thank you so much for the time, the wit and wisdom. Do come back. Love to talk about some of those other aspects of your amazing life, and really appreciate your generosity of time, and hope you enjoyed the time with me as much as I have with you.
I have. You have been a doll, and thank you so much. And I do hope you'll have me back. I had no idea you wanted to talk about Rudy and Bruce and all that, and James Brown, who was a friend. People are always surprised at all my eclectic friendships.
So much. You're the best. Yeah. You be well, and we'll keep the porch light on for you. And thanks so much for gracing us with your presence. It was an honor.
Oh, well, thank you for having me. And don't freeze in New York.
Exactly. Sending warmth, right? Exactly. You be well, and we'll chat soon. Thank you, Morgan.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. And thanks for being with us, everybody. We thank Morgan Fairchild for stopping by the Jim Masters Show. Thanks to you for all of your love and support of our series. And drop a comment right there in the comments section. We would absolutely love that. And again, like, subscribe, share this episode with your friends and family, and come see us again right here on the Jim Masters Show. We love you all. Thanks for being with us. Don't forget to take care of one another and be good to yourself, and take time for yourself as well. For all of us here, Jim Masters. We'll see you on the next episode, everybody. It's great to have you here. Cheers.